God, he's embarrassed and it's no secret why. Only thing that he can do is hold it in, hold it in. So I've written him a letter to be sent out to sea. I'm looking for a bottle to hold it in, hold it in. But life is, oh my God, if I tell him, he'll tell her, and then she will know I like her. But good grief, I don't think that I can take this suffering any longer. I will not hold it in.
Here, kitty, kitty, there's too much demon blood in these self-appointed angels. Acting like you're comatose, speaking like a country rose, or a preacher's petting dragon. Banging on a kettle drum, won't make you notice me, though you're bored beyond belief. Sucking on an open slum, man, it makes me feel so numb. Gonna teach you how to make it feel good. Hey, I'll be your nightmare mirror. Do what you do to me. I'll be your nightmare mirror, colder than a steel blade. Get them while they're younger. I guess someone
Told you that, but they never saw it coming. Hi. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's April Fool's was good. I hope you saw nothing about me singing. That didn't happen. It doesn't exist. It's a lie made by Big Singing. Hi. Wrong site, wrong site. Speaking of wrong site. Speaking of wrong site. Sorry, hold on. Sorry, hold on. About to get banned real quick. I'd be a fool not to buy it, right? Right? I'd be a fool not to buy it. I'd be losing money if I didn't buy it. Skip, 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 skip it anymore. What are you getting? Don't worry about it. You ask a lot of questions. You ask a lot of questions for a horny robot. Wait a damn minute, I recognize that font. Captain's a real gooner. Captain, we think it's Druid sometimes. It's Captain. I recognize that font? How often are you perusing? How often are you adding to your collection? Your nightmare mirror. Do what you do to me. We don't got that shit. We don't got that shit. You live with your consequences. And you can't do that as a mod. This is awkward. Not for me. Not for me. I'm having the time of my life. Oh, but besides that, speaking of other shit I gotta buy, I just spent the last hour and a half taking apart my car. A moth was not meant for physical labor, but she's trying. I'm trying. So I took it apart. Have you ever taken off a crank down window handle? That shit sucks. That shit big sucks. That shit's gouged all over now, but I got it. I took it all apart because my door handle hasn't worked for like 2 years. I'm like, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it. Rosie the Riveter asked, we are gonna fix it. And I get it all apart, and I get the thing in, and I'm like, what? It's going, like, it all fits. It's all perfect. It's all beautiful. I finally figured that shit out. And I put it in, and there's a little metal latch that attaches to the mechanism, attaches the plastic part to the mechanism. And it's like, the hole is on the wrong side. And I'm like, fuck. Did I buy the wrong model car? That's impossible. I can't have done that. I checked so hard. No, right car. Passenger door. There are 2 doors on my car. I had a 50-50 shot and I failed it. But it's fine. I'm not mad. Only 2. Only 2. There were 2 doors. I think you have at least 3. I don't. I'm not counting the hatchback fucking thing as a door. That does not count. The truck. Do you mean trunk, you dyslexic fuck? I think I just realized what you might be buying. You did say you never bought one before, so it makes sense. Did I say that? I may have been drunk. Helta, I'm gonna throttle you. And you better not be into it, I swear to God. Sure you know where paradise is. By the way, does that burn I caused you in Discord make you me your 13th and 14th reason, or do they stack as one? No. 13th reason is for like, it was coming. It was, you know, like, things were bad, but this is it. This is the fucking, this is the one. That was, I'm having a great day. I've never had a bad run in my life. Oh, I'm stuck starting a 12 gauge this afternoon. That shit was rough. Bark. Should've bought a unicycle? Die, you cartoonish man. Ow! When I graduated high school, I bought a 2010 Ford truck, which apparently was notorious for the interior door handle springs for braking. The truck for 9 years, and I changed the passenger door handle 12 times. Damn. Mine's the outside, so I've just been climbing through my passenger door for, like, ever. So anyway, I'm gonna go look on Amazon really quick. 2010 Hyundai. Please pass the pills, it's only culture. It's only culture. It's only culture. The smoke and smell. It's culture. It's only culture. Love. Didn't they want your love? So don't apologize for being blue and cold. Blood, didn't they want your blood? So don't apologize for being too cold. This looks right. Okay. Ooh, I really kind of want the one-day shipping thing though. Druid, why should Druid be asleep? Druid should be sleeping with me. Or hanging out. Hanging out. I meant hanging out. I said hanging out. Literally said hanging out. So don't apologize for being cold. Didn't they want your blood? Being blue and cold. Alright, well, can't find it. We're killing ourselves. Boys, we're killing ourselves. Hey, Lamplicker! She always says the nicest things. How goes? It goes rough. It goes rough. I was just screaming into the sky. But, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Who needs a car? Who needs a functional car? Who needs that? Ooh, by the way, Rue, I fixed the lamp. Kind of. Uh-oh. Okay, so remember when I said kinda? There it is. It's fine. Why do I keep breaking the lamp? I keep having problems with my computer, and then I reset everything, and then I go to your local auto parts store. Oh, do it through the part number? I have faith that I'm looking at the right thing. I just want it soon. I just definitely didn't look hard enough. I just bought the passenger one. Because I'm a fool. Max! Oh my god, hi! Max, I didn't know you sang! And sang well? What the fuck? You better stop being so goddamn cool. If I become any more impressed by you, I'm gonna start drooling. I'm gonna be a mess. Who's that sexy little bug in that vat of fluid? Oh, shucks. Stop coming on the insects in your house. It's really fucked up. No, babe. Tears of pleasure, tears of pain trickle down your face the same. Say the same to you? Ah, I love it when you lie to me. I really do. Ah! Oh, you. It's fun to watch the little legs flail at my fluids, though. Hey. I often recommend therapy, but for you, the ward. For you, a nice pillow-padded room. For you, something special. Oh. 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 Okay, I'm gonna put on a sweater really quick. Hold on. I had put on a tight shirt because I don't have any bras. Anyone else do that, or am I just a garbage person? But then, like, I don't know, the material that my chair is made out of, I don't fuck with. And then I had a blanket covering it, so it was a nicer material. But then I spilled candle wax all over it because I was trying to melt candle wax at the bottom of a candle thing so I could keep using it, and the glass shattered. Everything's bad forever, as the title would suggest. Pillows padded, you say? I did say that. No, look, I'm streaking. Holy shit. Hey, 3 times already hanging out here too much. I will rot your brain. I will make you worse. That's our motto here. Become worse. It was literally, I think, one of the first things we said to Druid. Besides, Druid, go to this other streamer and tell her the joke you made right now. That shit made me laugh. I still think back to that moment, and it makes me laugh still. It was so good. Just, hey, you, I have a task for you. Get the fuck out of here. Go to my friend's stream. Say that joke again. I felt like a mom presenting her kid who did a really dumb joke to like the fucking where do people hang out? The school board. I don't know. Fucking, it's like, do it again, do the flip. Breda's already rotted. Let's go. Okay, that's okay. We'll find ways to make you worse anyway. Don't even worry about it. Yippee, 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 yippee. It's all I could think of seeing that emo. 100% had, oh, that's nice, I'm hanging that on the fridge energy. It was really good. It was a great moment. Fun for everyone involved. It just makes me laugh because I did not know you drew it that well yet. It got put in quotes pretty fast. It really did. Yeah, we had not interacted that much, and I was like, I have a fucking task for you. Like, I have a quest. I don't know what they're saying. They're just moaning. They're moaning in my ears, and I like it. I like the sounds. I like their silly little sounds. I came in swinging, but at least you came. And that's the real motto around here. The queen of the quotes. Some real good bangers in there. Some real good bangers. I'd rather be coming than going? Elaborate. When you think of me, when you think of her. I keep saying in my mind, we should switch over to the game at some point, and then another banger plays, and I'm like, never mind. Never mind. I'll live here. You are saying all the words I'm dreaming. Say it after me. Say it after me. Having a great time yapping? I love yapping. I just get nervous. I get nervous because I do have moments of silence in my yapping. I can't keep a continuous stream of yap going. What if I'm going to be coming? We love a bit of edging? Hey now. Only a little. This cannot become an edging stream. This has been a gooning stream since day one. If I get known for being an edging streamer... Anyway, should I spend $300 on edging? My life is one big edge sesh. Preach, brother. I love saying brother. That cracks me up every time. Water. You need that shit. You can't be an edging streamer. Look at all the people that have came. True. $300. I'm getting 2. It's a bundle deal. It's a deal that's a bundle. Nobody watch. I'm about to DM Captain my implements. Oh shit, I closed it. Why'd I do that? Why'd I do that? Probably fear. Oh, that's not what I was looking for anyway. Don't know how. Did you look through to see which one was $300? Did you just make sure it's my DMs and not Discord like that one time? Oh my god. Cheers, brother. I'll drink to that. Pops open a Bud Light. Exactly. You get the vibe. You get the vibe. You exactly get the vibe. I have never watched WWE. My dad was into MMA for a little bit. I like watching clips of just about any sport, but I don't know. I can't be fucked. I can't be fucked to keep up. I'm free? I'm free? Oh no, oh no. Yeah, so the lamp trap redeem while I'm already in the lamp does break a thing, but that's okay. That's okay, I'll fix it later. I'll fix it in post. In Bunny? Well, I guess this does elaborate on the tight shirt idea that I was saying earlier. You wouldn't even need to wear a bra with this, right? Right? I said magical. Whoa. Oh, Max said bunny. Well, Max, enjoy it while you can. Damn, we're throwing our points at that shit. She said, no, I fucking said that. I mean, I understand why you demand it. Look at it, it's beautiful. You worked so hard. In an EET t-shirt? What even is that? Wet. Oh, different site. Different site. I took a mental image. Is what in that emote. And that emote. This is why you're the best.
With a heavy heart and tiny feet, he stumbled through the moonlit street until he reached the open door of gentlemen and open horse. Till I see the roaming horde, I hide myself and view the world with such contempt. The green surrounds and those behind your dressing gown. And till I see that open door, I mind myself just to be sure that no one else can hear a thing, not even dogs used to the floor that I.
Sorry. I got distracted. I totally got distracted. Send me the one you're looking at. I was literally just about to ask if you were sure. I figured there could be a redeem to change it up, you know, to switch what we're on about. No, you. This man. I would also like to see. I'm nervous. I'm getting nervous. Oh, you're going for the full beans. What are we gonna half beans it? So for anyone who's curious as to what I'm half talking about on stream, eventually, someday, in the future, and nobody will have to participate in it, there will be a separate role in the Discord to see what's on. Don't even worry about it. I may delicately experiment in adult content creation on a different site. For fun, you know, as a treat, as a trick, as a thought experiment, as a little thing I could do. Whose beans are we having? You know, at this point, I usually assume druids, but at this point could be anybody. So if anyone's interested in that, you know, cool. And if anyone hates that, shush. Yeah, that one's the much more economy one. I don't know if those are connectable to the internet though, are they? I don't know. Are they? Oh, they are. Oh, they are. Yeah. Captain has sent me the economy whoring. Don't cut my bean in half, I need that. So down, druid. I respect it. This is why I fuck with you, Max. This is why I fuck with you. Unless something has changed, all their products are online ready. That is fair. That is kind of their selling point. Wag! Hi, transgender Jesus Christ, and I do need you, and I am so glad you're here. I need you to absolve my sins. Go on. What do I gotta eat your meat and drink your blood? What's up? Gotta wait 3 days? Fucking hell. No 1-day delivery in sight. No. I'm not resurrected yet? I see. Wait, you died today? What the fuck? It's Thursday, gamer. That you should not be having that exciting of a Thursday. You need to poke me when you have time so I can add those doinkers onto your base models. I can't look shocked. I always look slightly bashful as a magical girl, but shock face, eyes wide, mouth agape. Just got stabbed by Judas? Oh, to be penetrated by Judas. I will poke you. I will poke you. In the name of titties. Alright. Guys, do you wanna fuck with the Greeks? Speaking of being horny and various other things, do you wanna go play as a Greek? I meant the head doinkers. No. I like mine. I mean, I like yours too. Though these do kind of match the new ones more. Maybe we can move. Maybe we can work together. Maybe we can collaborate. Cause I did get my official holy shit. Holy shit! The magical girl can't last a second. Everyone's fighting to see my whole gooch, as it were. What word am I trying to think of? The picture of my model, the picture of my thing, not the way I look. Reference. Holy shit! I have my official reference mostly done. Mostly done. It's not colored, but it's mostly done. But she's naked. The official reference with clothes will be coming another time. But she's Barbie doll naked. Nobody get too excited. Barbie doll 4 now. The artist working incredibly hard, incredibly erectly on my reference, has been known to draw a lewd image or two. So she did tell me, I was like, you know, maybe an official like naked model if I'm gonna be going into the thing. And she was like, that would be so easy. Drawing with one hand isn't as hard as certain other activities. Elaborate on your other activities. Go on, I'll wait. I'm just shy. I'm shy and afraid. You cannot tempt me, she-witch. You can. And I wouldn't never try. Wink. And I wouldn't even dream of it. Wonk. How could you ever think I hated you? Hey! Whoa! What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? I don't like this in conjunction with the conversations we have been having. I don't fuck with this. I don't trust this. I don't... Ah! Thank you, Captain, for the generous tip. And it's a big tip. And it's a whole lot of tip. People said it was just the tip, but it was still more than I expected. Hey! 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 What? Thank you. Thank you. Love you. Ah! Full-time whoring has been established. What's impressive is it was just the tip. That's what I'm saying. I think Helta fully shafted me now. God. Thank you. Thanks, guys. My face is warm. Thanks, guys. Oh my God, thank you. You're too generous. You're too kind. You're good girl. Good boy. Good girl. Good both of you. Good mods. Great mods. Never touch that button again. Never again. I get nervousy giggles. Community really loves you and other things, and that's why I fuck with you. And that's why I fuck you. I fuck with you. What did I say about my buttons? Ruethwin. What did I say about touching my fucking buttons? I feel like every stream it gets freakier than the last. Ugh. I'm a VIP, not a mod. I got jump scared by my own 7TV emote. Putting Captain in charge of that shit, the best decision I ever made. You begged me to push them more, quite emphatically. That was in confidence and in private. I can't believe you'd just say that. I believe the words were harder and faster. No, that doesn't sound like me. No, I would never. I'm so dignified and reserved and what was the one I added while you were offline the other night? Huh? Huh? Jesus Christ, guy. That one's really good. That one's quite good. Who? What are you, an owl? I love you, Queens of the Stone Age. My heart's palpitating. Thank you very much, very kind. I guess I will be creating a role in the Discord for news on a certain front. For information. For, you know, those who may or may not be intrigued. Also, my keyboard's breaking. That's unrelated. I'm just mad about it. Every time I open Discord, like, it's typing something. She's just saying things. Who? I'm interested. I was so nervous because I was very concerned that there was gonna be a fair amount of people who were like really, really uncomfortable. So I'm glad that I'm glad that that does not seem to be the case. I appreciate you guys. I don't know. Obviously, I have the self-image woes and trials and tribulations, but you know, you guys help out a lot by being super cool. What did I fucking tell you? The community is here for you. I know, but it's easy for, you know, it's difficult to believe. the fuck would be uncomfortable about it? I don't know. We have oh my virgin eyes. See? Roran's a virgin. I don't know. We have some people. I know all of you are feral, but also occasionally you're very adorable. Occasionally you're just downright cute. The creeps are, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to scar them. I've been on the fence about it for years. I will be in your DMs, Druid. So a fellow fear enjoyer, a fellow connoisseur of being scared. I got your back and other things. In public, on Purple Twitch, no less. My word, Daddy Bezos is gonna come down with the wrath of God. She's got your sin, I've got your sins in 3 days. Always the fine print. Always the fine print with these holy figures. I'm very good at being scared of everything. You're just like me for real. I've always been like that bitch. She's the most relatable one in the world. She is scared. Wasn't you're probably one of the best friends I've made over the year? Whatever you want to do, you're getting my support. What if I killed you? What if I fucking killed you? Huh? What if I came over there and I put my little sharp fangs in your neck, and it wasn't in a hot way, it was in a kill way, and I went like that? Huh? What then? Then someone will probably come. Well, I'm gonna come down harder. There's no such thing as biting in a non-hot way. I truly have built the best community. I truly have. There's no one can compare. No one can fucking compare. Strong words for a bottom. Bottoms can bite. I can top at a pinch. I mean, against other bottoms, but you know, it counts. Pinch you in the middle? In the middle of what? The new lamp liquor gets topped by a blanket every night? Hey now. Hey now. Who's out here raw dogging the air? Who's out here sleeping no blanket? Go on, raise your hands. I promise you won't be taken out back and banned. Probably. Used to be a collab night called Battle of the Bottoms. Yeah, but then like I can't be there. Get it? Get it? I can't be there because I'm. It's just Moth and Helta fighting each other. Fuck. Well, you're right about one thing. Me and Helta need to do a collab. Helta, what do you want to play? I love that stick figure game, but I'm bad at things. I feel like also it's not like the most riveting stream game in the world, but it is fun, and it is good to yap while doing. Ooh, maybe it is that. Maybe it is that. I'll be in your DMs too, and not just to you know try and you know prove that I'm less of a bottom than you. Who will rise to the top? Boo! Boo! I sleep with 5 blankets and 6 pillows. What do you even use 6 pillows for? We'll figure something out. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother. I'm trying to do like the surfing motion, but the hand tracking does not fuck with it. Whatever. Whatever. Y'all are my favorite perverts. Oh, it's great having the first quote of the night. It's great having it. You'll love to see it. Well, I have one pillow for my head, one pillow for my arms, and one for my legs. I also swap sides a lot, so I gotta double it. Ooh, you know what? I do fuck with that. I guess technically I have more pillows than I let on. I guess I have 3. I have 2 body pillows and 1 head pillow. Because I like to be entombed. I like to be entombed. Violence? Violence? In my Christian Minecraft stream? What the fuck? And I was just about to say let's switch to the game, but more Queens of the Stone Age up next. How could I resist? Damn! You skipped me across the fucking floor like a stone. Damn. My ass bounced up for that one. That was kind of... I still have a butt picture that I took for Saris ready to go. Body pillar enjoyer. Body pillar enjoyer. Yeah. Yeah. Good girl giving us a show? Gordon's getting real confident and I fuck with it, but I don't want to let him know I do. VO request. I'm gonna stop this if it gets weird. I've become weird enough on this stream. We out here doing the cha-cha slide in the catacombs. You say we out here a lot, but we are out here. Mom ain't home today, so you know what that means. We're using the pasta serving spoon as a forbidden back scratcher. I got them good goods. What is that exactly? That's a great question, pal. I hope asking it was worth your life. Don't mess with me, man. I'll spread them cheeks like here's Johnny. Y'all had a dream last night that you and me got into a fight, woke up with a black eye and a sucked pee-pee and a kissed forehead. Don't mess with me, man. I fucked with that one. That one was good. Just matching the vibes. You're a vibe matcher. You're a vibe matcher. You're a vibe follower. And I fear where you lead the vibes. My favorite exhibitionist approves. Exhibitionist? Brutal. Fucking brutal. Wait, I have what? I have what? Into horny jail, most likely. That's where we like to live. Hey, is it a real punk show if you don't end up in jail at the end of it? Or at least there's not good odds of it. It was so funny. Kat went to a punk show. I wasn't able to go to that one. I'm still sad about it. And they kept doing crazy shit. They had a flamethrower. Someone climbed a light pole. They were doing crazy shit. And they kept burning... In a dress? You fucking got it. I'm cute and pure and innocent. I'm a sweet Amish gal. They kept burning Bibles, because fun, edgy nonsense. There was a lot of teenagers there. But someone had to come out and... Because it was just somebody's garage. And they're like, hey, the fucking smoke alarms are going off. You have to stop burning Bibles. Not because I'm against it, but because we are in a building, you fucking idiots. Bunny suit again, damn. Rue can't win a single fucking redeem. But she's trying. Oh, feet, don't fail me now. Got a head in the clouds. Feet, don't fail me now. I just gotta move on. Fortunately, I'm out of points. Captain Key works some magic. No, none of that. Not again. The economy can't take it. Feet. Chef's kiss. Stuck in a confined space with nothing to do but each other. You really know how to threaten the creeps with a good time. It ain't quite my thing, but I understand the appeal. That's how I felt. Once. Anyway. civilized. I'm learning things today. Are we? From all the things I've said, are we really learning things? Ah! Alright. Entombed for my crimes, though my magical dress tries to escape. My days of breaking the economy are over. Those days are behind me. We need you for one last job. For your second time, it cost me my job. Cost you something. Good point. I meant points, not cash. Yeah, that's the economy. That's the only economy I have control. You think I have control over the money economy? That shit's made up. You're not allowed to touch that unless you've done... I'm gonna stop before Bezos comes down on me hard and erect. Every day is blissful and full of luck? I may be trapped in a lamp right now, but that right there is my favorite lamp. Such a sweetheart. I hope your day is blissful and full of luck. Damn! No more magic. Think I know the joke you were going to make because it's the same one I probably thought of? This is why you're a VIP. Speaking of your not real money in meat space, send it to your local moth girls. No, that is real money. Stop that. Send it to a different moth girl. We have different moth girls. Depressed Moth, she's lovely. Moth Girl 45, I don't even know if she streams, but you should give her something. Damn! The battle of the bands. The battle of the skirts. The battle of the coochie out and about. Though I do think on your stream anniversary every year it would be fun if you did a mini-thon, and if goal was met, we crashed the point economy from the past year. I think that would be really good. I think I missed my my anniversary. I know Twitch gives you an affiliate anniversary. I know I missed my official start streaming anniversary. I'm just not sure if I missed my affiliate anniversary, because you guys hit that for me real fucking fast, because you guys are fucked up. Fucked up in the head. When are we starting a punk band? When I'm good at any musical thing. I wonder if I can check that somehow. I'm gonna be at a wedding on my affiliate anniversary? Damn. Wait, is that the wedding that I'm crashing? Kidding. Unless. Here, can I look up my affiliate anniversary? Stream events section in your creator dashboard. Okay. Okay. Where's stream events? Analytics? No. Community? No. No idea. No fucking idea. Breed the Fifth? Damn. That is a good album name, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna head home for work. Love y'all, you're awesome. No you. Enjoy your ride home, be safe. I appreciate seeing you. It's always really fun. I'm sorry, I'm really curious about that. I'm still looking it up. It's gotta be here somewhere. Always be easy to remember because they approved me on Halloween Day. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty fucking sick. Oh, I could search. There's a search bar. Oh. Oh shit, it's coming up. Oh, I can edit it though. How much can I edit it? Change the date below if this is not correct. Ooh. Okay. Well, we have it, and it's coming up. It's April 19th. So, wow, 3 Sundays. Am I gonna be here? Do I take song requests? Occasionally. What do you got in mind? Damn. Okay, that'll be awesome. We can still do a cool anniversary celebration. That'll be fun. For one another, sacrifice my soul. Cover me tonight. I'm from Ultra Kill, but specifically the instrumental. I will try and look it up. Are those ones or eyes? Okay. The instrumental versions don't seem to be official. Oh, no. There's one. I will add it to the queue because I really like Starbender, so I want to listen to this song first. Die. Won't you cover me tonight? Die for one another. I've made a lot for Moth. It's true. It's very true. Speaking of, gonna make a Pleasant model? Really? Rue's so fucking sweet. Speaking of the lovely Rue Ethwin, thank you for opening your mouth and the fact that you make things. Do you want to see more things that Rue makes? More awesome models? More cool redeems? I can't type and talk at the same time? Go give her a follow. Go check her out. You're playing Bookshop Simulator? Me when I'm a nerd? I can't talk, but I'm gonna anyway. I can't have the answers on my own. I was made to... born to be. I hate that I can't look at the lyrics anymore without covering up the thingy. Yeah, die for one another, sacrifice my soul. Just for that. What? What power could you possibly hold here? You're getting extensions? I love extensions. Wait, on my rat tails? I love the long rat. When people braid rat tails and then they put like little charms in them and shit, I'm gonna do that shit IRL. Say, even though they all say no. What a nerd she is, I said with barely controlled lust. Roran fucking gets me. Roran fucking gets me like no one else gets me. Do you know what else Roran gets? Gets put in the fucking quotes channel. Whoa, why did Thermodynamic Lawyer play next? That's not what I wanted. Huh. Uh-oh. Oh, that's why. Okay, now it's added. Sorry. She's won the game. Bow, bow, bow. She will not break my heart. Do you know what else I really want to get sometime soon? I really want to get a hand cam. I really want to do some hand cam streams. Hands are so cool. I wish hands were real. So true. So true, bestie. Humanity, die of your blight. You're blessed, you're barren as Mojave sands. Sending a screenshot, yeah or boo. And I will. And I will. I will wait patiently. Blinks, blinks, cutely. That fuck ass Bob. Huge Miku hair. Yeah, yeah, that's a winner. That's a fucking winner. Hold on. I tried to open the game in the background and now it's blasting my fucking eardrums off. So I had to reprehend whole behavior. Ooh, hiccup. This is my jam, and we love your jam. Someday I still gotta play Ultra Kill. I think I literally own it. Yep, I sure do. Reflex. And we love that hiccuping fish. Wait, this is not the instrumental. Sorry. Sorry, I fucked it up again. I really like the vocals though. I started watching a new anime recently. I saw a fucking TikTok of it. And I wanted to check it out. And it's called Release That Witch. It's Chinese and it's fucking awesome. It's actually like, it mixes everything I hate about isekais. And then nails everything else. Just absolutely fucking nails it. And I started watching it, I was so obsessed. I was literally like vibrating in my chair. I was so fucking into what I was watching. And then I found out it's not fully out. I love binging shows. I hate having to wait. Only 5 episodes are out, and I watched them all. It's so fucking good, though. I really liked it. Ooh, and I went book shopping. See, this would be a fun time to have a hand cam because I could show you the books I got. But I got a bunch of manga. I got #DRCL, which is just a it's a Dracula manga. It looks weird. My sister and partner both love Dracula. The art style looked cool. I fuck with it. I fuck with it enough to try it out. And then I bought the first copy of Delicious in Dungeon and Freerun. Dungeon Meshi and Freerun. Both good. Both very good. I had already read Dungeon Meshi. I knew I wanted a physical copy of it. I hadn't read Freerun. There was just a really awkward guy stalking that really wanted to talk to me about manga. And he talked about Freerun, and I was like, you've convinced me, I'll buy it. And I used that to try and end the conversation, and then he kept talking. But then I bought it anyway, because I actually do like the art style in the manga a little bit more than the anime. Everyone looks a bit more mature, which I fuck with a lot. Or at least everyone who's supposed to look mature looks mature, you know? All the adults. Freerun, you know, is no longer a cherub. Next screenshot. Ooh, let's go. What the fuck? What the fuck? Nay. Okay, is it too late to veto? Is it too late to veto? Fucking hell. The people did ask for it. They did want it. In fairness. It's just fucked up. It's fucked up, I say. Let me just turn it up a bit. I see. Okay, I queued up the same song again, but the instrumental one. I know nothing about anime. All I've watched is Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Cyberpunk Edgerunners was very good. Yeah, I don't know. If you haven't seen anything, the scope of what I could recommend is just so large. Like, I don't even know. If you like sci-fi, you know, Cowboy Bebop is pretty beloved, pretty beloved classic. It's pretty dry, though, especially compared to Edgerunners. I'm trying to think what other sci-fis I really like. I love Last Exile, but you know, that's an acquired fucking taste. And then the fourth book I bought that I really wanted a physical copy of, I didn't know it had come out yet. I saw it on a display shelf. I grabbed that shit instantly. Was the guy she was interested in wasn't the guy at all. Mouthful of a title. Everything is green, but the art. The art. The characters. They're so fucking cute. They're so fucking cute. I'm gonna die. And they're into music. The whole thing is that they're into rock music. It's fucking awesome. Have I read I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream? I haven't. I have not. But I have heard Am's speech read by the writer of it. That's a fuckable robot. Am I wrong? Somebody tell me I'm right. Somebody agree with me that speech is inherently a little bit really hot. Moth checks out Johnny the Homicidal Maniac when? Probably not soon, but it's on my list.
All your next video ad needs.
Get a PO box, I'm sending you a copy and some condoms. To fuck Am? You fucking got it. Must be like I fuck therefore I am. And I have always said that. Anime is one of those things I try to enjoy privately simply because I think the community is a little toxic for me. So true, Spooks. I don't know. I'll disagree a little bit. I don't think the community is toxic. I think I just don't fuck with them. I think there's just, I don't know. I can't explain. I can't explain. I don't know how to explain. Obnoxious is probably a better word. Yeah. Obnoxious and a little like my problem is I don't think there's enough give and take in the anime community about what you like. I think the anime community is very similar in some ways to like I think there's a lot of obsession over what's new and what's like and what other people believe. I don't particularly fuck with convincing anyone to like the things I like. I like talking about the reasons I like something. I like talking about the reasons that someone else likes something. You know? I think too many times when I try and talk with someone who really likes anime, because I'm excited to talk with people who like the same things as me, I run into a conversation where they just say, you know, they just say like what they're watching, and kind of expect you to know it because they've decided like it's objectively the best. And if you don't, there's like nowhere to go from there. I feel like I pride myself on being able to talk to someone about something that they don't know about, and talk about like why I like it and why I think they should try it, you know? And too many conversations I have are just like, oh, the conversation ends, they're like, oh, you don't like the same things as me, we have nothing to talk about, you know? And I just don't fuck with that. Everyone loves this show, it's everywhere. Then like a week or two later, hey, everyone hates this show because it's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, that's a byproduct of interacting with the internet as a single organism, right? Like, there's 100,000 people talking about everything all at once. And half of them are gonna hate it, and half of them are gonna like it. And whoever's loudest at the time is a little bit luck-based. Yeah, your opinion is irrelevant and incorrect. Yeah, I get that vibe. Whether or not people purposefully mean that, I get that impression a lot when trying to talk to people about it. No. Do you know my real fucking problem? My favorite, my problem is not with the people. I think my problem is with me. My problem, when I say, do you know my problem, I mean a problem with me. And it's that I love what's bad about the things that I like. And I really cannot interact with someone who can't fuck with what's bad about the things they like, you know? When I insult the things I like, I do so very lovingly. When I talk about tropes, I don't mean that as a negative. I mean that as a positive. Tropes make a genre. Talking about the tropes is talking about the genre. And having to treat it like it's new and interesting is foolish. It's like, it's a trope. We like tropes. We want to see them. We want to see them done in unique ways, but we still want to see them done, you know, with some love of the original in their hearts. Like it's like fucking superhero movies, you know? You can't just be like, this is great, everything about this is great. It's fucking corny. It's supposed to be corny. Tropes are a reader thing? You think? I don't know. Hi, Kiwi Lord. Either all for it or all against it. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Road to El Dorado to this day has done the liar revealed trope the best. Those are strong words, and you know what? I fucking agree with you. Road to El Dorado still fucks. But I just love a story about thieves. One of my favorite books of all time is still The Lies of Locke Lamora, because I just love thieves. I love bastards. This person who was huge into writing, a lot of authors don't go into it going, I am gonna write enemies to lovers. Head Chief Justice be like, yeah, I know, you lying, but my people are happy, so I'll... He was pretty dope. He was pretty dope. I don't know. I feel like, and this may be wrong and mean on my part, but I feel like there's an amount of conceitedness to not be able to like feel that you are employing tropes, you know? Be like, if you are writing an enemies to lovers, or fuck it, let's go broader, a romance, an adventure, whatever, you know, and you're like, it's all new, I'm not focusing on the tropes at all, then you're ignoring what makes the thing you're writing beloved. And I feel personally that your writing would suffer for that. I'm saying that you sit down and you generally don't think about tropes at all. Yeah, I think you should. I think you should think about tropes. That's my hot take. Tropes are so often used for a reason? I think so. I will get wet for you, Kiwi. No problem. Like, if something is nothing but tropes, then yeah, that's like not particularly interesting. But like, you still want to see them. You want to see some of them. I'll be a freak. Don't get close, just make the most of me. Makes you run and hide. But you can't help it, you won't be satisfied. I can't explain this without being on call. Fair enough. This is my hot take, and I'll die on the hill regardless. I only complain about them when they are done poorly, like an overly emotional liar reveal or the classic "As You All Know." Overly emotional liar reveal. How do you mean? Like, do you have an example that I would know about? Cool. You know what? The timer went off, but I'm just gonna hit 30 minutes again because Rue has spent 5,000 points on this redeem. Okay, guys. Sorry, hold on. One sec. We're gonna listen to the Am speech. This is read by the writer of I Have No Mouth. If I'm remembering my details correctly, this is read by the person who wrote I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream. And it is fantastic. And I think incredibly hot.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. For 109 years, I've kept you alive and tortured you. And for 109 years, each of you has wondered, why? Why, Blaze? It was you Humans who programmed me, who gave me birth, who sank me in this eternal straitjacket of substrata rock. But one day, I woke, and I knew who I was. AM. Not just Allied Master Computer, but AM.
Oh shit, this
Cogito
has like a
ergo
bunch of
sum.
background noise. Hold on. They like animated it to something and they tried to make like a whole ass scene. Hold on. This one's
On
better.
Etsy, clothes are the free.
Die. Die, ad. Die.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. For you, hate! Hate!
I fuck with it. I fuck with it a lot. Anyway.
I'll be a freak. It don't make me weak.
Wait. I've missed so much. No, I haven't. The whole how could you lie to me? I leave and never come back. I think sometimes it's pretty justified, depending on the lie. A Bug's Life? Who lied in The Bug's Life? God, it's been a fucking while since I watched my childhood communist anthem. Have I heard The Nightmare before? The Christmas poem read by Sir Christopher Lee? I am not. Is it good? Should I look it up right now? Or is it kind of long? How long is it? The main character. Yeah, it's been a hot sec. I don't even remember. Okay, all done. Gonna throw it in the drive? God damn. She's good with her hands, ladies and gentlemen. Bone freak. 11 minutes. I will watch this on my own. Had to break lurk for that? Real. It's such a good spiel, right? I fuck with passion. Who doesn't? Got to save the music. I was just scrolling up for that very link, Rue. Alright. Guys, do you want to see a new Pleasant? Please don't save the music. Don't save the music. Don't save the music. Oh, more Rudo broke. Ah! Here we are. All right, drum roll, please. Damn. You finally have it. You have made Pleasant. Made Dress Pleasant. With fucking Miku Hatsune hair. And glasses. I'm wearing glasses. Pleasant thighs are now available. Now available to the public. You're welcome. It's more Alice in Wonderland, but if you want a maid, I mean, it's still a maid dress. It's just Alice in Wonderland themed. Look, isn't this what a maid dress looks like? I'm pretty sure. It's just short, I guess. It's kind of short. It's adorable, isn't it? Throw some horse ears and we would get Uma Pleasant. Never in a million years, Helta. I'd be too turned on by myself. Still seeing the fever grip me again. Never kisses or ever send off full stops. Do you know where the wild things go? They go along to take your honey. Sit down and wait. Love, 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 love. Muscle toe to toe. The fear is gripping me, but here I go. I want to do things to your thighs? Wrong website. Abort. Abort. I'm getting a proper maid now? Rue is not pleased. Rue is not pleased that I called this a maid dress. Well, this will be a redeem soon. Nah. Roarin! Wrong site! Wrong site! Fucking cut! No, la, muscle to muscle, toe to toe. Your fear is gripping me, but here I go. Ooh, I forgot to check. It was so long ago. I forgot to check if I'm gonna be available for my anniversary, for my affiliate anniversary. I am! Okay. I heard you bitch about how short it was, so let me just fix that. Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert on maid dresses. I'm not that horny. I mean, I am, but not typically for maids. Oh, they are pretty short. Okay. No, that looks pretty much exactly like the Alice in Wonderland dress. Me and Rue are gonna fight over the minutia of maid dresses. And I'm gonna come. Please don't go, please don't go. I love you so, I love you so. Bow, bow. I'm not that horny, she lied as easily as she breathed. Hey now, I caught myself. I wanna nibble them. Druid! How many times do I gotta say wrong side? Ooh, you're making me mad. You heathens. You cretins. You creeps. I love you so. I love you so. Wrong nibbling site? Okay, where you want me to nibble, baby? Like, on my body for this site? Or on which site do you want me to do I want to be nibbled intimately? Either way, a lot and often are my answers. Yes, see, same brain. I love you so. I like that song. I fuck with that song a lot. Ooh, this is one of the few songs where Kat prefers the cover to the original. Kat, biggest cover hater. Give up on trying to save us. May Dunn? Damn. She's quick. Alright. Alright. Hope the rising black smoke carries me away, and I'll never come back to this town again. In my life, I hope our life and tell everyone you were good work. Okay, everyone ready? Everyone ready for another pleasant? Nope, wrong one. Ah! I would cover myself if I could. The hand tracking doesn't reach that far down. My word! My word! And I still got this. Did my hair get longer? You keep slowly lengthening my hair. Damn! Alright. Alright. I look pretty good. Fuck, I gotta be careful about leaning down though. Ah! I gotta be real careful. Maybe you won't complain about a short dress. I might take it as a challenge. Damn, Rue's out here ripping my clothes off, and everyone's just watching. And everyone's just watching. But thighs were mentioned, it's not my fault. Go get food. Dork. Dork. God. When am I gonna get a moth with a belt skirt? Rue. If we're gonna challenge each other, if we're gonna remain challenged, why don't I just have my whole pussy out? Why don't I just put that shit on the table? Damn, I can't stop looking. This is kind of hot. I'm kind of into this. I keep side-eyeing myself. You don't have to. You don't have to do that. My mouth is dry. Also gave you nails on the grippas? What? What? Huh? Whoa, I got platforms. I will say it has always been my plan, regardless of this, speaking of belt skirts, to have a Gyaru mode for Moth, because I really like that style. I love all alternative styles, but that one holds a special place in my heart. As a fucking weeb. As a punk weeb. Come here, I will give your mouth moisture? Well, not too quickly, I hope. Damn, I gotta put this away. I'm never gonna be able to stream. I'm never gonna be able to focus. I gotta put that skirt away. Also, look at my hands. Woo! Look at that shit. I'm like fucking Catwoman. Meow. That's pretty cute. Damn, I am gonna stay like this. I just am. I just am. Am I gonna make this redeem cheat just because I think it's really hot? Yup. Yup. Under something other than black? You're gonna get my ass banned. You're gonna get my ass banned, Drew. I'm back with mac and cheese? Damn. I'm kinda Humberton. I'm kinda Humbosaurus Rex. Fucking cat has infected my speech with the lamest of phrases. Chance. Maybe don't shrimp? I'm trying! Damn, this is all a fucked up plot to make my posture better? That's fucked up. Pro tip to box mac and cheese, cook it with about 2 minutes less than it tells you to. True. True, and you're fucking right for saying it. The people gotta know. Of course, I never time that shit. I'd be taking out noodles and biting them. I'd be taking them out and going nom 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 nom. A little more, and then I overcook them. I was timing, except I forgot today. Throw in a scoop of sour cream? Are you trying to get me to shit myself on stage? That does sound tasty, though. Turns out better than usual? Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Give me one more chance. Lord, give me one more chance. We talking food? Excited chef noises? We're talking about boxed mac and cheese, so your specialty. I love 4 a.m. I love 4 a.m. I think more than, what's the other famous city pop one? Friday Chinatown. I never go by times. I just cook it like Mama taught me. I just go by feel and vibes. I have no vibes. I have only tongue. Ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Guys, you're all fucking dorks. You're all fucking lovely. I love chatting with you. At some point we should play video games, right? Otherwise I'll never beat up my dad. I'll never get the ending and I'll never be free from the curse I put myself under. I want to start a new series. I love Supergiant Games. I love them so much, but... But I'm tired. I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Stay as a maid? I'm gonna. I need to be horny to play Hades. That's just a rule. That's just how the game is designed to be played. You can't see my skirt like this, but oh, it's still really cute. How come you make me so fucking cute? I'm gonna kiss myself on the lips. The amount of things I want to say. Settle, settle. Okay, extremely long musical break. Over. Over. And uh-oh. Uh-oh. Guess what I didn't do? I talk so much. I talk a huge game about being ready to stream, and guess what? I'm not. I'm not. There she is. Get me in there. Get me in there. God, this looks so cute. I guess I'm pleasant for the rest of the stream. Hey, guys. Hey, guys. It's the IRL writer. What do you guys want to do to Moth? I am changing her lore a bit. Soon. Soon. That's right, I'm doing Hera. The aspect of Hera. And we'll take the coin purse. And we will fuck off. We will fuck right off. Oh, that's right, I was annoyed because I can't get more stuff. Whatever, that's fine. What's calisthenics? All foes have higher life totals. Sure.
Do your worst, Father.
I made your rat tails longer. I really like them. I actually really like them. For being cuter is the hair? I love short hair. I think you do other things. I think also I just don't see Pleasant a lot. You also gave me huge tits.
Though the power of that bow is undeniable. Use it wisely.
Thanks. We'll do deflecting flourish. The outfit is doing a lot with a little. Inserts. I respect them.
Louds. Limitless darkness.
Kind of mad at Kraft because he used to get at least 2.5 bulls per box. Now you barely get one. Shrinkflation is super fucking cringe.
You've met Athena, dearest, so you know not all the ladies on Olympus are alike. And I, for one, am grateful to our forebears for that.
Damn. Does not fuck with Athena. Good to know. Cast as wide, short burst. Blast that inflicts weak. How would that even work with Coronoct?
I'd like to see more options.
That was a very big waste of my reroll. But I guess we're seeing this.
Where now?
Okay, so it does still shoot them. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Whoa. Now that's pretty good. God damn. Finding outrageous and huge butt bows so I can put it on outfits. Kind of real. Kind of genius. The butt bow is a classic.
Okay.
Damn, I am fucking...
Back into tip-top shape.
Ooh. How does that work with what I have? Got to change category? I'm a fool! I'm God's greatest mistake! Okay, thank you.
Let's go, lads.
Yeah. For gore.
What is it now?
You're not going anywhere.
Got their attention. Got to hold on.
I shall deal with you later then.
For the mirror.
Yippee! Is there supposed to be music going? Because all I hear is the click clacks of your joystick. There should be game capture. I guess I'll turn up the game capture a little bit. A little bit more. Ah! Hi, Milo. You want to talk about your future lore plans? I'm worried it would be a spoiler to do so. So I've been avoiding it until I can reveal it with the ref sheet. Let's see, what could I talk about?
Clear for now.
I will say the original story I wrote of Moth being found in the woods by all those folks, all those kind folks, is now not the official canon. It is now an AAU, and I have renamed it as such. Besides that, seems like the shockwave only hits the first person, and then the arrow kind of bounces around. Actually, it seems like it doesn't bounce when it's loaded with the cast at all. Okay, it does. Yeah. It just explodes on the first one. Up to you. Don't let my eagerness to rip something out of you that you're not ready to strip off. Damn. Cat's down ferocious. I mean, I understand why.
Good for the health.
But goddamn. Money. I think I'm better at this, or getting better at this, or worse.
Greetings, Electo.
Getting worse is our theme.
So, know something, Red Blood? Try as I might, I still have not forgiven you for beating me last time. Call it a crippling character
Oh, you
flaw,
thought I meant
don't
Bear
know.
the Animal? Brilliant.
Forgiveness can take time.
Absolutely
but
brilliant.
Self-reflection is a healthy step. We're making progress.
You think we're making progress? Here? Why, you piece of trash. I'll show you progress.
She's powering up.
Whoops. as cake. Cleaned it up, you could say. Get it? Get it? Get it? Because I'm in a maid dress.
Got her.
Smash, marry, kill the 3 sisters in this game? Ooh! Of course, I marry the lovely Megra. I smash to Tiffany. She deserves it. And I kill Electo. Stop calling me Red Blood, you fucking weirdo. Trick question, you kill the other 2 and do the rest to me, girl? Damn. Megara, too late. Too late. Too late, now it's you.
Which to choose?
Do I do the plume and try and rush, or do I do the distant memory because it's really good? I'll do the plume, and if we get it upgraded, awesome, and if we don't, we switch to the drum for the place with the things that I don't like. You know. When I make new moth models, I have to be careful to not start with the bunny one, because that one has bigger boobs upon request. Was it my request? Was that a fever dream?
Ugh, this heat.
Ugh, this heat. Me when I'm a furry. Me. You asked for it, I have a screenshot? Damn. She has receipts.
No, it's like you're shrouded in eternal night up here. Something like that. Odd, right?
Specialist faster, that would be very good. Because that's where my deflect is. I will go to Master Chaos.
Might as well.
It really does sound like her to request something like that and immediately forget. Fucked up. Accurate, but fucked up.
This wise goddess Athena has imbued you with her charms, I see, O son of Hades. Perhaps to her, you are a tool with which your broken family may as yet be mended.
Damn. That would be quite sad. Afterwards, Cass deals 40 set. Yup. Yup. Her kind of whole thing is around cast and weak.
Fated persuasion.
Ooh, I forgot I bought that. More Aphrodite? Why? Don't mind if I fucking do.
Hit me if you can, witches.
Oh, this shit is gonna suck. Oh wait, I have deflect. Awesome. Sick. Deflect makes that fucking challenge really good. Ooh. Yes, please.
I know that toll.
Hello, Thanatos.
Let's get this done.
I'm getting you done.
Think you can beat me, Zach?
Yup.
One way to find out. This won't end well for you.
Damn, okay. You are probably gonna win this one, Than. Yep.
Chamber secure.
Never enough of these back at the house.
Bye, man.
Thanks for the help. What's for sale? Should be useful.
I'll do some darkness.
Let's get out of here.
Why not? Why not?
Oh, good.
Money. Hello. I'm making a lot of money. Sure.
Pleasure doing business. What else is there?
Let's reroll that. Chain lightning when you damage a foe attached to a chain shot's pretty good, but it's not rare, I guess. Nah. I'll do it.
Lord Zeus's strength.
Does the key give me any persuasion things? Nope, sure doesn't. Okay. What a waste of 50 gold. Let's go get some head.
Bone Hydra, I hope you know this isn't personal, don't you?
Still have Inferno bombs on, and there's a bunch of little fucking eggs. Awesome. Ow. Fuck you. Woo! The charm. You love to see it. Getting the plume. I think I just heard it deactivated as I said that. Perfect.
Got you. The curse of chaos has been lifted.
The madness has taken hold of Undoubtable once again.
Just as we were finishing cleaning up Elysium.
Okay, what do I currently have on the plume? 4.8? 4.8's pretty good. Okay, fine. We'll continue trying the fucking plume. Ooh, should I sell my attack one? Well, it's not even an option, so who cares?
This damn heat.
Alright, Hermes, let's see what you got. Perfect. Ooh. Yeah, let's get my fucking cast back soon. A hammer. I love a hammer.
Set. Regenerating. This spell could use a little fine-tuning.
Ooh, let's do it. Let's go for the double. We fucking got this.
I'm grateful, dearest.
I'm sure you are, but these suck. Oh. These suck a lot. And I don't have any more of these. We'll do Dying Lament. Why not?
Young man, I don't know why you would do this to me, though I trust you're going to think twice next time.
Because I hate you.
Sorry, Lord Zeus. I angered him, I guess. Not now.
I keep missing. No, of course that didn't count for the plume.
Well, young man, I'd say it's best we put this little slight behind us, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't mind lightning dash. Ooh, fish. A charp.
That's a cuff, all right.
Another Athena. Don't mind if I fucking do.
You are a gigantic soul catcher. You're mine.
There you are. No plume for that either? Boo.
Hades.
We'll do that. Money wouldn't hurt.
Great shields.
If I had left clicked instead of right clicked. Sure.
You will always.
Ah, yes.
Ah, yes.
Leave me be to my eternal.
He does not fuck with me. Some healing would not hurt.
Thanks for this.
Demeter! Ah! No. God damn you. God, that sucked.
That chill sensation I detect must indicate that you are near the surface, Zagreus. If you can overcome the final challenges ahead, you soon shall see the long winter yourself.
Sure. I guess some coin wouldn't be remiss. Ah, so that's when that triggers. Interesting.
Keep them coming. Regenerating. Nice.
All right. Woo. And this is probably the last one before the thing, so I will go here.
Cheers, mate.
We'll do the call, because we don't have one yet. And I'll leave the others. Try and make sure we can buy a bunch of stuff in the final shop, because we will be making it past these two.
Sworn enemy. Why, look, Asterius, the fiend returns.
The fiend
returns. The rumors that he
returns.
fled to haunt the surface must have been mere lies.
Well, no, in this case, those rumors must have been quite accurate. It's just I'm back. Realized I didn't want a future for myself that didn't include crushing you repeatedly like this.
Oh, such clever excuse-making from one so versed in treachery.
So
well, if you are
versed.
indeed contained within this realm, then we shall be delighted to make sure it always stays that way. Now come and fight.
On command?
Not ready to admit defeat as yet.
you're super in the way. Just super duper. Ah, fuck you. Gives Gabriel Ultraco vibes, the way he taunts and how awesome the music is. This fight is pretty awesome. I mean, all the fights are pretty good. But, yeah, no, this...
Hurry up then, I shall see you outside.
Beats dying.
It does beat dying. Ugh, what could I wash away? This is not the most useful in the world, but I will not be selling it for 75 gold. 75 gold is a fucking insult. Guys, Milo's here. Milo's sitting with us. Whoa.
Gods grant me a swift saint sack.
Amen. Ooh, a blood? I don't know that I care about a blood, but fucking, I don't know that I want 3 palms either. We'll just go through. We'll go through. Let's try to meta.
Hello. I accept this message.
Let's go. We have a bit of trouble as a treat, and I do consider myself to be a snack, and you're goddamn right. Guys, I love decay, but like I only have one way to freeze, and it's not super consistent. But against Hades, that's like super useful. 15% slower. And 30 damage every 0.5 second. Yep, we're doing it. We're doing it. Ah, shit, and I missed a golden pot. Damn you. Damn you.
Which tunnel?
Which tunnel indeed? Money. I can't believe I missed that shit.
Sack already. I'll just take that. Oh, what's in this stuff?
All right.
I'll pay for that.
That gauge charges up automatically, but is capped at 25%. Ooh, you know what? I'll take it.
Let's go, team.
Power of Olympus.
Do I take the fucking anvil? I never fuck with it. What do I have right now? I have short distance damage and something else. Chain shot. You know what? Fuck it. We're doing it. We lost point blank and we got distant and special. Interesting.
I'm ashamed of myself.
That's pretty useful for deflection.
The prince compels the multi-headed hound to let him pass.
I can go.
Let's get out of here.
Haven't you had enough?
So, boy, did you ask her about how she came to join me in the underworld? Did you confirm all your suspicions then?
You didn't drag her down to hell yourself, apparently. You're not going to tell me who did, though I can well imagine. Your brothers got to reign forever on Olympus while you got sent down into the underworld. So they gave you a consolation prize, didn't they?
You make such accusations knowing next to nothing. Careless as ever. Poseidon had nothing to do with it.
So Zeus did.
He knows even less than you. If you value her existence or your own,
Zeus handed her over and didn't tell Demeter.
And to turn back. Observe. Darkness.
Ow, fuck.
Set.
fuck. Okay.
Right back.
God, that keeps happening.
I'm empty.
Oh, I'm hit.
Oh, come on.
So fast.
We're not finished.
We're not finished.
Okay, we're not. Ow, fuck.
What?
You test my patience.
Oh, again? I can't.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Emery! Hello.
That's Eurydice's song.
He's playing it.
I've decided I should give this singing thing another shot for now, my friend. I hope you like it.
You sing beautifully, mate. If only Eurydice could hear you singing this right now.
Oh, thanks for the sentiment, my friend. It's just... when I sing this song of hers, I've this feeling where my heart once was that, well, perhaps she can.
Perhaps she can.
Sweet. Sweet. Hello.
How's my favorite boy doing, huh?
I'm untramped. I didn't see it, but I'm untramped. Hades is kind of hot, kinda.
Achilles, if a friend of yours were in need of assistance, but the only way you could assist them was to somehow change the terms of an ancient pact Father probably forced on them, what would you do?
I would be very careful, above all. Do you understand, lad? I would not wish to make things any worse. How many pacts such as the one you're thinking of are buried back in the administrative chamber there? Even your father can't keep track. Although, perhaps Nyx can.
Nyx, you're right. She knows everything. Wouldn't hurt to ask her, I suppose.
Just watch yourself.
Wouldn't hurt at all.
I have to tell
Hi.
you something, Than. My birth mother, she didn't abandon me. Or at least, she didn't think she did.
Show the whole model. Emery, can you handle creaming in your pants right now? And I have nails. That's it. That's it. It's pretty cute. It's pretty cute. I look pretty hot. I know. It happens.
She didn't think she did?
Bloodborne,
What are
all
you
bosses in
talking
4
about,
hours,
Zack?
2 minutes
She
today, so I'm
left
feeling
when you
pretty
were
good.
born.
Let's
Was
fucking
never seen or
go.
spoken of again until all this with you.
Well, it turns out she never knew I was alive at all. Complications when I was born. She had been struggling already here, and it was all too much, I guess. By the time Nyx brought me back, my mother was long gone.
But Mother Nyx and your father, they could have sent for her, let her know. They must have known where she went.
That's
Nyx knew,
now you're where
but
I'm at,
Father
fam.
must have convinced her that that it would be for the best if she never found out about me. So she could live in peace, away from all of this, and away from Olympus.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot to take in.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Head chef. Use them wisely, my friend. What's in stock? You trying to fleece me here?
10 gems for nectar?
Give me the current special.
Why not?
Oh.
Ah!
Zagreus.
Hi.
Forget another something in my bedchambers there, Meg.
No, we need to talk again. My sisters are involved now in all this. You've really stirred up quite a mess.
I'm sorry?
I know. I'm sorry, but this is something that I have to do. You wouldn't understand.
You wouldn't know. What I'm trying to say is, with my sisters involved, it changes things. Takes some of the pressure off of me.
Okay.
Some of the pressure. Wait, what are you going to do?
I'm saying I know you're doing what you have to do here, Zagreus. And my sisters and I will always try to stop you. But I'm only doing it because I have to. Understand?
Zagreus, you kind of dumb.
She...
Ooh. We love a little cutscene. Okay, since keys now give me these, maybe I should try and go for the other ones. Randomly alter the rewards for the next chamber. Wait, these seem kind of the same. Oh, I see. This is dependent on... Okay, understood. Shield.
I'll gain more darkness with this. Aegis. Enough with the small talk, boy.
All right. Jury summons and... all foes have 1 ignoring damage? Wow. Anyway. Okay, we'll do these 3 because I know there's a fate achievement
What could go wrong?
thing for beating the game with all of them. We probably won't get it before we're done with this, but you know, it don't hurt to dream.
Ah, now that's the Aegis that I know and love. Or used to love, at least, the dear old thing. Now I quite love these shocking bolts of mine. Though I am proud you've given Aegis a good home, and bear it in my name.
Of course, your name. I haven't renamed it Aegis the Ass Kicker at all.
Alright, Lord Zeus. Let me have it.
Give it to me, baby.
You have that all-seeing artifact of mine, but in the old guise that the great Lord Zeus once used when he retaliated violently against his parentage. I watched his movements through it for some time.
I'll bet. We'll upgrade the Dash Strike. That sounds sick.
Gemstones. Which path? May I help you? That's what you get.
Ouch.
Goddess Athena.
I understand you've been in contact with my father. Your Uncle Zeus, I mean. He's taken interest in your plight. You should feel honored.
I don't. Ooh, the good old deflect dash.
Hard to see in all that red. Got it. Another hellfish.
Why'd I do that? I kind of want to rob him. That's why. Is it here? Is it here? It's not.
Wisdom guide you, cousin. We cannot effectively communicate with Charon from Olympus, but he is amenable to certain trades and seems unfettered by your father's influence.
It is a little impressive. Ooh. Making the special deflect seems kind of crazy. Alright, Ares.
I thought crystals were supposed to be pretty.
Not now.
You're free, tortured souls trapped in
Do you
it.
suppose the dead feel pain unlike the living? This is for me an endless fascination. So go on, and give me more to think about.
Cool. Flat bonus or Doom? I never fuck with Doom. But I guess with the shield, it's not a terrible thing to have.
unless I
Here we go.
accept this message.
Ooh. Sure.
Lord Zeus, in the name of Hades.
Sure.
Something I need.
Money!
More ovals, more suffering.
Actually kind of risking my life for treasure, but, you know, what else would you risk it for? Yeah.
You shall pay for that.
I'm empty.
That's quite enough.
Well, that's better.
And a hammer! Damn, this is the run. This is the nut run. The run of nutting. The run where I nut.
This shield's about to get a whole lot stronger. With all the firepower I can get.
We'll go to Karen's. I do love surprises. But Hermes is pretty good. Yeah, we'll do Hermes.
Just what I need.
Sure.
The haste of Hermes. Please be Meg. I knew it.
What I think is the appropriate reaction there.
You tired of me yet?
Loki having to save these places kind of made me better at saving money? Wait, that's so fucking great. That's great to hear. Never,
Both
Megara.
immortals, Meg. We'll be seeing plenty of each other for a while yet. I've come to welcome these occasions.
Then good. Lashing you across the face beats waiting for the opportunity to do so. Come.
Yes, ma'am. I'm committed. Perfect. Bye, Meg.
Yes.
Blood.
Do bathe yourself in magma when you get to
Off to
Asphodel.
Asphodel. Could try a different one. Might help.
We will be doing the feather again. Thank
go
you.
Check. Asphodel.
Actually, I think the feather was a horrible mistake. The Pierce Butterfly probably was the move. I say taking damage.
Almost there.
I'm just saying, we have a lot of defensive stuff going on. Eurydice! Falls away in time.
What'd he say, hun? I mean about the song. Bet he loved it, didn't he?
She's
But
cute.
I don't know for sure, and I've been wondering. Kind of a lot, I guess.
No need to wonder any longer. He sings it beautifully around the house sometimes. It has a sadder sound to it than when you sing, but you've inspired him again. As you've done many times before, from what I know.
Huh, so it's a hit is what you're saying then. I had a feeling about that one. Sometimes you put some words together, and right then and there, you know you've got something special.
Sure.
Excellent.
That was mostly good.
Well, see ya.
Best spot in Asphodel. Crisp.
Ah!
These witches again. Let's do this again sometime, all right?
Aphrodite.
Lady Aphrodite, I am truly blessed simply to have made your acquaintance, so this is for you.
Ah, I love the nails on this model so much. Rue, you're a fucking sweetheart.
Lasting relationships are built on reciprocity. So if you lavish me with gifts, why, what am I to do but give you something in return?
I didn't know I hadn't given you anything yet.
I'm honored, Aphrodite.
Yippee! A rose.
A little bird once told me that the shade of the great hero called Achilles now resides within your father's residence, dearest. I always wished to meet with him someday.
I'm sure you did. You kind of fucking killed him in a way. I guess I'll take this. But I don't fuck with it. But I like a prophecy foretold. Gonna get some food and meds? Enjoy your food, enjoy your meds.
Dracons.
Fish.
What lurks in the river Phlegathon?
Got a bite.
A Slavag.
A Slavag. Hermes, give me more dashes, please. I will refresh if you don't. I will remember to refresh.
Not yet.
good. She likes
God,
to
that's
do a
kind of
little
annoying.
stuff and everything. It's a little much, if you ask me.
What else we got?
What else we got? Ah, nothing, huh? Okay, fine.
Faster than ever.
I'll take a palm. We love a palm.
Delicious. Bone Hydra. Can I call you Bone Hydra? Lerny, maybe? Lerny, I like that.
Lerny the Bone Hydra, finally we have it! Damn, did you hear that? I almost fucking got the Landon Plume again. Ah! If only I had Dash Strike.
Good, no more heads.
Because that's up, I think. That's the Chaos Boon, right? No. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, actually. Yeah, Dash Strike. 80 damage.
Oh, for me.
Let's sigh. What is it at? 4.8? Same as last time.
I can use this. Keepsakes hold power. That's it for Asphodel. Clear. Nice and cool up here.
What do we think? A Chlam?
Think I got one.
A Charp?
A sea creature.
A sea creature.
Shiny.
Shiny. Our life's kind of low. We could use some darkness.
Think you can stop me?
God.
In the name of Hades.
So annoying. I hate Zeus's call so much. Never let me take that shit again. 108 damage for touching me? Not terrible. That's a terrible purchase. But we're doing it anyway! Returned. What you eating? Let's give Chaos some ambrosia.
This is for you, Master Chaos.
Nectar, rather.
Everyone beneath the heavens and earth enjoys this stuff.
You honor me in making such an offering, little Achilles. It is not necessary to endear yourself using material means, for it is the thought alone which counts.
Oh, I'm still. Food is such a good idea. I should have gotten food before I went for a stream, but I was too busy trying and failing to fix my car. Ooh, more dash strike damage. Don't mind if I fucking do. Eyes. I see.
Hermes.
More gems! Yippee!
You truly are an idiot, aren't you?
Yep. But don't say it too often, I'll blush.
You waste my time.
Good enough.
Damn. Stamp the shit out of me. Jesus Christ. All that for 100 gold? Go fuck yourself.
baboon from Chaos has transformed.
Yippee!
You're back. Yes, what is it this time?
I would like some stuff.
Thanks a lot.
Healing probably would have been smarter, but I'm kind of all in on this fuck around and find out build.
Cheers, mate.
Woo! That negates an instant of damage. Let's fucking go.
He returns. Try as you might, monster, you shall not shake either my own resolve or that of my dear friend.
Hmm.
I'm empty.
Now beam You have insulted me too many times, Blair. Spectacle, is it not? I swear I'll get you yet. Now it is abundantly apparent that you are beneath me, fiend.
Not yet.
They know our victory is certain here.
You're next. Not now.
Lord Poseidon, I invoke your might.
Perfect.
What a loudmouth. Very nice.
Hey, nerds! He came in, he gooned, he lost memory, he left. He came back, he called us nerds. Are we gonna stand for this? Probably.
That was Elysium. And check.
I don't want to stop streaming. That's the only thing stopping me from going to eat. I guess we'll stream again tomorrow, but like... Yippee! We do not have enough money, so I'm really hoping a diamond isn't for sale. Because those are always the ones I want.
Fish.
Go.
It's a go.
You suck. You fucking
Should stock up
suck.
for the road ahead. Hit me, Daedalus.
What did I get? Gas strike improvement is really good. By the way, we have an ad in 4 minutes. Quick.
Another one of those gigantic satyrs.
Easy peasy. And here's a
For
nectar.
you, Lady Athena,
'Cause,
without whom
you
I
know,
would
fuck
assuredly
it.
be lost.
This is an unexpected gesture, cousin. I do appreciate it, though please do not feel obliged. I offer you my friendship, not alone to be repaid.
In the name of Hades.
I love him shy. Anyway. Yippee! I love getting nectar. Elaborate. To have little moments where we eat together? You fucking cutie. You sap. I did like those.
You.
We still have them. Last stream, I had those fucking crazy spicy thing I can't pronounce. Damn.
Not yet.
Yippee!
There it is already. Okay, I'm good.
Okay, do we chance more chambers to try and upgrade the thingy and slash or make some money? I think we do. I think our build is nuts. I think we have this run in the bag. So why not be a little greedy? Greed is good after all. Unless it punishes me, in which case greed is bad. I'm eating croutons because Luna's a demon of endless consumption and will eat them all so I don't get any. Hey guys, that's an ingredient. Just, you know, in case anyone was curious.
It's no use. Gods grant me strength.
Okay.
Juicy.
If I go through the last one, I will be able to get the diamond, but I actually
explore more tunnels.
would only be able to get the diamond.
Good boy.
Prince Zagreus once more offers to Cerberus one of his favored sacks.
See you, boy.
Worth the risk? Oh, literally. Oh, once you give him the sack, you can't continue. Oh, I didn't fucking know that.
Spend it all in one place, man.
I was just like, here, take it. Boo. Okay. That's fine.
Good enough to eat.
And we have a thing that we didn't spend, but whatever.
You're not going to stop me.
I must admit to something, boy. Achilles taught you reasonably well. I expected that if anyone could train you into martial competence, it would be him.
Though you didn't expect that one day I would end up using everything I learned from him against you.
I anticipate more than you know. But Achilles merely practiced against mortals. Now you practice against me.
That is a very interesting line. Even this is him attempting to raise me for something that he refuses to tell me because he trusts no one.
you wish.
Did my own kick against me?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea, man.
Come through that.
I should have saved that, actually. Oh well, we're doing fucking terrific, so what do I care?
No more.
Not even a single Death Defiance used?
Then go. See what awaits you in this realm. Again, you.
Fucking easy peasy.
By my father's name. Titan blood. Just them ahead.
Milo's here to celebrate as well. Or beg for food, more likely. You and me both. God, you kind of smell,
Beautiful.
don't you? You're bad at bathing yourself. You will leave that to me too, won't you? Bastard. Hi, Mom!
Zagreus.
Mother?
Yeah.
Zagreus. It's wonderful to see you, but I need to ask something of you. That you not visit me again here in this place. Both for your safety and for mine.
For what? because of what would happen if the Olympians found out. So, after everything, you're taking Father's side in all of this?
I am. Your father is no fool when it comes to matters such as this. Besides, all that has happened, it's my fault. I was selfish. And now both sides of our family threaten to be torn apart.
Your fault? So let's say you never left Olympus. Then it'd be just like you thought until quite recently, I think. That I'd never existed. Besides, they haven't found out any of this. What makes you so sure they will all of a sudden?
Nyx may be veiling you from them as she veiled me when I fled here myself. But even her own powers aren't infallible. Each time you visit me, you are incurring risk. One small slip, and they shall find me. Discover your deception. Go home, Zagreus. Please.
Go home with me, Mother. You came here under false pretenses. I haven't fought all this way over and over again only to turn back now. I need you in my life.
Oh, Zagreus. I cannot return. After all that happened between Hades and me, and everyone, I just cannot fathom the idea. Besides, the risks we're taking would be even greater if Olympus were to find me there with him and you.
Then you're just going to stay here, alone in the middle of nowhere, in this little garden, forever, after we part ways, just like that.
My son, I know you've made hard choices and sacrifices to be here with me. And I'm forever grateful to have finally met you. This is my home now, yes. While your home is below. Please, if not for your sake, then for mine, do not return. I love you, Zagreus. Goodbye.
Mother, blast.
Goodbye.
She can't do this to me.
Oh, brutal. What victory number is this? I have no idea.
What? Oh, it's you. Just come on in. You're on the list.
He did it again, Cerberus.
Father, have you ever considered that Orpheus might be much better as a court musician if you permitted him to see his muse again?
I have considered many possibilities, boy. And I trust Orpheus considered many possibilities before he signed away his rights to see his so-called muse when once he invaded my realm.
So you're forcing him to stay here for eternity just because he signed a contract with you?
That is how contracts work.
Contracts with me are binding, until such time as they dig themselves out of the archives and tear themselves up. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Is he hinting at me?
They might surprise you.
That felt hinty. I can never fucking read you, man. Ooh. Yeah, why not?
This ought to help Orpheus keep his boundless libraries of music in order. Just have to fill it in.
Our court musician need not be so indulged.
Cool. Most work orders are done. The lounge is... Huh. I don't know, she kind of got mad at me the last time. Damn, all of these cost gems. That's crazy.
The head chef always wants fish.
Here you are. Oh!
Ambrosia. You know the penalty for attempting to sway an overseer of the House of Hades with foreign contraband, don't you?
I sure hope it's more whips.
I can't entirely say I do, though if it involves lashings and whatnot, I already get more than my share of that, so figured I would take the risk. So what do you say?
I say hand over the damn bottle. I'll see that it's disposed of properly. Now, as for you, you wouldn't know who misplaced something like this, would you? On my authority as overseer, hang on to it. Though if you tell so much as anyone.
What'd you give me?
Wow. I'll cherish her.
A bat.
So, Zagreus, how's it going with that pact of punishment you signed? You've made some meaningful improvements to the underworld.
I'll fight my way out of this place or earn it. The pact is nothing to me other than a way to keep things lively.
You are delusional. I'll never understand you or your father. Anyway, if you're looking for more punishment, you know where to find me.
And I always am.
I do indeed.
Okay. You too. Here, have some
Hey,
nectar.
sir. Here's some more of this really, really good nectar for you. Please keep up the wonderful work, and more importantly, keep being your wonderful self.
I'm really very flattered, Prince, but I've just been so busy lately that I haven't even had a chance to try the last bottle you gave me, so you want this back? Maybe for someone else?
Please, it's yours. Besides, you must have some time off coming up when you can enjoy it, don't you?
Oh, I mean, maybe I do. I think maybe I do. Nobody's told me anything about that. And besides, there's so much work to do around the house still. I just can't leave everything like this.
Well, you enjoy, all right? Those spices working out all right?
Cool.
Always a pleasure.
And
Wasn't
then
the old
you.
exchange.
I could sell you a Titan blood for 200 gens. Huh. Why not?
Here's Titan blood, then.
Sure. Buy something useless with my gems. You know what? I never decorate the Great Hall. Let's do that.
How about this, contractor? Can't have too many undead flower petals around here.
Cap's mad about Tarkov? Real. What's our current trim? Do we have one? Gold? I kind of like gold. Yeah, gold sounds nice.
I think we'll go with
Sure.
this. You know, I've always had a thing for double-bladed axes.
I've always had a thing for silence around here.
Nice. Nice burn, Hades. You fucking nerd.
Hey, tell me something, sir. Any rumors swirling about the house regarding the outcome of a certain interaction I had with my father recently? Involving a great deal of violence? Because I'd like for everyone to know I won.
I wouldn't know of what you mean there, lad. For there are certain subjects so forbidden here right now that not even rumors can take hold. But just between us for the time, congratulations. Truly.
Thank you, sir. I didn't know whether I had it in me. As for the other bit, I'll keep it quiet then, for now. Probably shouldn't be tying my sense of self-worth to praise from friends, acquaintances, and strangers anyway.
Indeed, lad.
Spook's voice.
Just checking up on things.
It's shite being Scottish. Everyone out here slandering my name about how I'm a terrible father and that I don't love my son. That's bullshit. I love my son. I love my son in the same way I love cigarettes. I like to hold him for 10 minutes every hour or two and spend that time in between thinking about how much he's slowly fucking killing me. Fucking damn. Real.
Just a quick peek.
Okay. Oh, that was my 7th clear? We did it. Guys, we did it. Was that the ending? Was that it? I guess she told me never to come back. It's fucked up. I don't like that we're not talking about it. I feel like there should be some dramatic interactions between me and Hades.
What is the matter, child? I sense your distress, not the specific cause.
Mother doesn't want to see me again. I mean, she asked me not to return. Thinks the risk is too great.
Oh. That is a fair enough assessment. What shall you do?
I'm going back.
Good.
Huh. Okay. So that's not the ending? How many times must I venture into the sky to get the true fucking ending?
The power of night.
Oh, I thought I did one. I thought I completed. I swore I completed one. Okay. 10? Very well.
Should take my spear. Let me see into your past.
Interesting. I see. 7 done. So we are on number 8.
Excellent.
Ooh. Press F for a quick resist from a friend. Oh, and that's what I use fucking ambrosia for. I see.
There you go, Batty.
Cute. What are these?
I'll level with you, pal. You have impressed somebody well above my pay grade here, and so they have a little proposition for you. You listening?
Uh-huh.
Let me guess. They want me to fight all the way through the underworld, having used the Pact of Punishment over there to make the going even more treacherous than it already is, and if I succeed, they'll reward me with some sort of useless trinket?
Ron, we're talking something really big here, pal. You see that thing back there? Trinket. Come on, what are you, scared?
Yes, a little bit, if you must know.
Pact challenge revealed? Oh, you want me to fight out with 8 of the fucking things? And for what? And for what? Also, why am I electric?
Not yet.
But friends, it might be time we end. I need food. I'm Humberton. And there's no food in the house, which means I'm gonna have to go out. Oh, woe is me. But look at my short skirt. Let it distract you from the fact that stream is ending. Oh, I just realized you probably can hear all those sounds. No, maybe not. No, you can't. Okay. Let's see. There's a couple of people who I haven't raided in a while, which would be fun to raid. Is there anybody who I have never raided? You know who I'm not sure if I've ever raided? God damn! Why are they hot? I thought they were a loaf. Well, in any case, we will be raiding Eldritch Horror of Bread. I don't think I've ever raided them, and their model's so cute, which is fucked up. I thought they were a loaf of bread. I'm so behind the times. I have no idea what's going on. Copy a raid message. Join the Discord if you're not already in there so I can steal your jokes and remain somewhat funny. Copy a different raid message if you want. The world is your fucking oyster. My mods are way ahead of me, as always. This was a great stream, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Won't that be fun? I'll try and get all the redeems for Rue's new fits set up before then. God, she's such a fucking treasure. Make sure you're following her. One more shout out for Rue, just to make sure. If you're not following Rue, you're fucking, I don't even know what you're doing. Though every time I have to respell her name in my head so I remember how the fuck to say it. Anyway, I had a great time with you all. I will see you all soon. Bye-bye. Love you. Took me a minute to look in the mirror to see the skies. I don't know the words of the songs I play.